From your local election headquarters, here's Fred Childers with This Week in Louisiana Politics.
Good Sunday morning to you. I'm Fred Childers. Thanks for joining us for This Week in Louisiana Politics on your local election headquarters. Well, Governor-elect Jeff Landry announced the new top brass for the Louisiana State Police and his plans for how to tackle crime in New Orleans. Capitol reporter Shannon Hecht brings us insight into that plan.
Before he takes office, Governor-elect Jeff Landry is appointing new top brass for the Louisiana State Police and taking aim at New Orleans to turn crime around before the Super Bowl lands in the Crescent City in 2025.
It's going to happen right here in this city in 13 months. And so the past statistics that have plagued this city cannot be in place when Super Bowl and kickoff time comes. And so everything is on the table.
Major Robert Hodges, a 28-year veteran of LSP, will be taking the superintendent role. Another major announcement is that the new Attorney General's office will be conducting a review of the agency alongside the Department of Justice investigation.
And I believe that this support is best demonstrated by conducting a top-to-bottom self-assessment of LSP, including the policies, practices, and operations, and by providing guidance and the means to achieve lasting improvements.
AG-elect Liz Murrill is also being granted the power to prosecute more criminal cases in Orleans Parish that involve the LSP.
It is our hope, both Jason and I's hope, that this new partnership will assist in restoring the rule of law to this city and provide victims the justice they deserve.
It is something the Democratic District Attorney says could be beneficial to tackling the crime issue.
Partnerships like this have to become the norm.
Landry also appointed the state fire marshal and the adjutant general. For your local election headquarters, I'm Shannon Hecht.
The election for Caddo Parish Sheriff led to a recount after a one-vote margin. Now losing opponent John Nicholson is seeking legal action to confirm the election results, which he claims revealed many irregularities with votes being cast. He says the process was essentially rushed and shows a large amount of unlawful votes were cast. Alexandra Meacham reports.
An unprecedented election that resulted in one deciding vote out of more than 43,000 cast prompts John Nicholson to file a lawsuit.
As any candidate would have done with a .0002 margin of difference, we requested a recount. We did that because it's critically important that the will of the people be respected in this election.
A recount took place Monday. Nicholson's team requested a hand recount. However, he was told by the Board of Election Supervisors that the timeline was too short to conduct a hand recount. Instead, a machine was used.
And what my team discovered yesterday is that many, dozens at a minimum, in the small sample of ballots we were able to inspect in the short time we had of these certificates, had no signatures at all. In other words, ballots had been submitted without a voter signing it.
Nicholson says his team found other discrepancies, including several votes being counted twice and votes counted from residents who had already passed away by Election Day.
I am confident, based on the information we have received over the past 24 hours, that the uncertified results reported by the clerk of court to the Secretary of State will never be certified.
He claims the lawsuit seeks to make sure lawful votes were counted and unlawful votes are not, asking for a judge recount.
Louisiana's maps for the State House and Senate districts had their first day in court this week. The two maps were drawn in early 2022 and have been challenged in court for potentially violating the Voting Rights Act, just like the congressional map. The Louisiana House has 105 members and the Senate has 39. Currently, only about 25% of those seats are majority-minority districts, despite the state's population being one-third black. Witnesses were called by the plaintiffs to explain how not having proper representation impacts their lives.
That they have been harmed by having maps that don't reflect their communities, that dilute the voting power of black people like themselves, like their neighbors, their families. We've heard about the ramifications that has on their lives, on state policy making, on feeling like they are represented, like they have a voice.
Meanwhile, Republicans who dominate Louisiana's legislature say the map is fair. The trial for the maps is expected to last about a week as more witnesses are called. As for the congressional map, when a special session will be called, has still yet to be decided. But a new update on the congressional case. Judge Shelley Dick has granted a 2-week extension for the legislature to go back into session to pass a new map. Previously, the January 15th deadline set by the 5th Circuit Court of Appeals would have made it impossible for incoming Governor Jeff Landry to call a special session in time. Now it's possible that the new administration and legislature will be tasked with passing a map with 2 majority-minority congressional districts. Well, the Seafood Safety Task Force is working to ensure better and safer laws are being implemented for buying seafood in Louisiana. Congressional and statewide leaders got together to talk about changes they want to see.
The Seafood Safety Task Force says seafood in Louisiana brings in $4 billion a year.
They're a huge part of our economy and importantly a big part of our culture in Louisiana.
But even though it's a booming industry, members of the committee say they have some concerns about what the consumers are eating.
It's really about the health of people.
The task force is worried that countries like China could be using illegal chemicals to increase the number of seafood products sold. Congressman Garrett Gray says,
"And it's unfair competition because they're being subsidized by their governments. It's unfair because they're using chemicals that are not healthy, and they're intentionally trying to force our seafood industry to be shut down."
According to Lieutenant Governor Billy Nungesser, Louisiana inspects 5% of seafood brought into the state, and a generous portion has antibiotics, which is unsafe. And he's proposing this idea.
Ask the federal government to add 5 to 10 cents a pound inspection fee on all imported seafood.
The Louisiana Department of Agriculture and Forestry suggests properly labeling packages so customers can be aware of what they're buying.
Those labels need to be on the front of the package and to specify in font size so it's clear.
More meetings are being planned in the future, but in the meantime, officials are working to make sure the sportsman paradise remains.
It's not Louisiana seafood, it's not Cajun experience.
Sudan Britton reporting, Fox 44 News.
Governor John Bel Edwards announced grant funding for the Tunica Hills State Preservation Area. Edwards says this incentive is about keeping Louisiana dollars in state for outdoor activities such as camping, hunting, fishing, and boating. Leaders say it also diversifies tourist attractions for Louisiana. Edwards says the Economic Development Corporation and the Department of Commerce provided $2.57 million, along with an extra $1 million of state capital outlay. Congressional leaders and FEMA get together in New Orleans to find out how the feds can better respond during natural disasters. That's next. Stay with us.